Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan John joining you for this edition of Nate at 8. And, well, a lot of the same continuing for the start of October today. Unseasonably warm and dry. And that's a lot of what we saw into September. And that's what we're going to see here going through the first week of October with bone dry conditions and still some unseasonably warm temperatures, especially into these afternoon hours. We'll be tracking some cool and even chilly nights ahead, but the one common theme with these temperatures, the afternoon highs, they're remaining unseasonably warm, 70s to 80s again by this weekend. So that's some of what we're going to be talking about for this edition of Nate at 8. Again, appreciate it as always for tuning in. That dry and warm start to October, and also plenty of sun. It was abundant sunshine today. Gorgeous day across the area, and that sunshine that we saw today mixes with a few more clouds tomorrow, but still plenty of sunshine as we extend through this weekend. And talking about that abundant sunshine, there's a time lapse overlooking the city of Steubenville and blue skies and sunshine. Not even a single cloud in sight as we look at the time lapse going throughout the course of the day. And there's a few more clouds, high level clouds starting to spill in there towards sunset. And then we'll see some more clouds mixing in overnight, but still a good amount of sunshine for tomorrow. And then by the latter part of Friday and the weekend, well, it's back to a sight of what we saw today. Blue skies and sunshine, going to be a gorgeous stretch of weather. You may be noticing now, especially this time of the year, these early sunsets, right? And here over about the next month, and especially a month from tomorrow and on, but really the next month, we notice these early sunsets. This is the time of the year going into October, into the beginning of November, that these sunsets get real early on us. And we'll notice that sunset even before 7 o'clock coming up here later this week on the 4th. And by the time we get into October 24th here in a couple weeks, or a few weeks, we'll notice the sunset before 6:30. And the big drop is once we fall back an hour with the end of daylight saving time overnight on the 1st going into November 2nd, again, roughly a month away. And that's when we'll notice that sunset at 5:17 p.m. So a big change in these sunsets, especially over the next month coming our way. Certainly one of those signs of the changing seasons, those early sunsets. And a lot of us like the fall foliage. I don't know how many of us like those earlier sunsets that we get for this time of the year. Our current temperatures across the region falling from the 60s and the 50s. This is coming off of highs that were into the 70s. And while it did trend a little cooler with respect to the end of September, it's still unseasonably warm. The average high closer to 70 for the start of this month. And it falls 10 degrees. The average is near 60 by the end of the month. Average low falls from near 50 to near 40, and even technically into the upper 30s by the end of this month. And we dealt with those temperatures today, again, climbing well in the 70s, not as warm as the 80s over the past couple of days, but nonetheless still unseasonably warm. We do lose a lot of daylight throughout this month, like we discussed with that earlier sunset, 76 minutes as the daylight lost throughout this month. The full moon coming up here in less than a week on October 6th. The full moon this month, known as the harvest moon, also will be a super moon as well, meaning that it can appear a little bit brighter and bigger compared to a typical full moon, just because the full moon is occurring where the moon is actually near its closest point to Earth on its orbit around Earth. So the fact that the full moon is occurring when the moon is near its closest point to the Earth, that is what we call a super moon, and it's occurring when you're the full moon coming up here on October 6th. So an interesting statistic on the harvest moon is that it is also a super moon. The warmest and coldest temperatures. Warmest 91 degrees, coldest 16 degrees. That's always a good indication of the big temperature changes that we can get this time of the year when we're dealing with such extremes for the warmest and coldest temperature in during the month. And yes, we certainly can deal with some warm days easily some warm days going throughout the course of this month, but also can be dealing with then also some pretty cold temperatures as well. And on average, our first frost actually in the first week of October, not in sight for us the first week, this first week of October, but on average, we even get that first frost of the season occurring into early October. Again, nothing of the sorts in sight this time around, although it's chilly, some chilly temperatures, but not quite cold to the point we're dealing with frost anticipated here for the first week of October. So recapping what we had in September, we all felt it, right? It was unseasonably warm and it was dry for most of the month. We did start off with some cooler temperatures right at the beginning, but for most of the month, it was warm. The average temperature coming out of 67.3 degrees, not breaking top 10, not top 5 like it was for last September, but still a warm September, warmer than normal for those average temperatures. Total precipitation still ended a little dry compared to the 30-year average, 2.86 inches, picking up more than 2 inches of that over a 4-day stretch last week. And that being said, we only had 6 days with rain going throughout the month. And again, we picked up majority of our precipitation in a matter of just 4 days during our wet stretch. And 2.86 inches, while still trending a little bit below normal. That is actually the most precipitation that we've had at the airport during September since 2021. So it's been a handful of years the last time that we had dealt with precipitation to this extent at 2.86. So it's another thing to note. Again, as dry as September was, that wet stretch really skewed the overall total precipitation for the month. And if it wasn't for that, again, we'd be looking at one of the driest, maybe the driest Septembers on record if it wasn't for our wet stretch of weather. Another interesting, tidbit, the amount of cloud cover we had. So 20 clear days, a lot of sun. Only had two dreary days throughout the month. September is typically one of those months that is more on the sunny side for us. We typically get a good amount of sunshine for us here in the valley going through the month of September. Overall, typically pretty nice month, September. I mean, the wild card is, of course, any remnants of tropical systems that can bring the dreary and wet weather. But for the most part, outside of that, September is typically a pretty nice month for us here in the Ohio Valley. So now as we look ahead into October, well, the first week, right? It's still looking warm through this weekend and it's dry. So that's not changing. But even as we look throughout the entirety of the month, when it comes to the precipitation outlook, still favoring some drier than normal conditions. And even when we look at the temperature outlook, still favoring above normal temperatures. So overall, the forecast for October is still looking warm and it's still looking dry for the month. Doesn't mean we still can't have some cool days, some chilly nights, and some wet days. But overall, at the end of the end of October, still likely going to come out above normal for temperatures and below normal for precipitation. That's how it's looking as we go through October. Keep in mind those average temperatures, right? Those average highs start to fall into the 60s. So even dealing with 70s is above normal this time of the year. Not to say we can't have some 80s in the mix, but dealing with a lot of 80s throughout October, especially 10 plus, is very rare. I mean, we can get at least a handful of some 80-degree days. We're going to get close to, if not 3, coming up just this weekend into early next week. But to start to pile up even more than a handful, and especially any more than 10 throughout the month of October, which would be about a third of the month of highs 80 plus, is rare for us to deal with that many. So it's more common to deal with up to about a handful of 80-degree days. So just something else to keep in mind, that that above normal temperatures doesn't equate to us dealing with 80s for most of the month. Just due to typically starting to cool down during this time of the year, above normal can easily mean a string of 70s coming our way throughout the month instead of dealing with a string of 80s. Again, going to be dealing with 2, if not 3, coming up this weekend, early next week. We can add on at least a couple more. We can, string together 5 to 10 80-degree days, but start to get more than a third of the month being in the 80s is very rare for us. More so that it's likely not going to happen, but some 70s certainly can still remain in place for a lot of the lot of the month, and that's still above normal for this time of the year. Joe, good evening. Hope your day was good. It was, Joe. Thank you for tuning in. Austin, good evening and happy October. Happy October. It's here already. Today was very warm, but the air was cold. I started wearing my face mask again to help keep me safe and healthy. And thank you so much for tuning in, Austin. And today, again, another unseasonably warm day, but yeah, you get out of that sun and in the shade. It certainly felt cooler. Austin says, use my face mask to help prevent the cold air hitting my face, causing to have a sore throat. Today was so warm that I got to mow. All right, Austin. Thank you, Carol. You are welcome. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for tuning in. And Austin says, not happy that October is going to be above average. I'm very ready for colder weather. I think a lot of people may be joining you there, Austin. Want some more fall-like weather, right? This is not screaming fall. If anything, the 80s this weekend screams poolside weather, not pumpkin patch weather, right? It certainly does not scream fall weather, but I'm sure here in a matter of a month that it's going to be hard to, again, even when we're talking above normal temperatures, it's going to get harder and harder to see these 80s continue. We've had some 80s into November over recent years. We can get at least one 80-degree day into November, but it starts to become much more rare here in a month. It's to string together these real warm afternoons for this time of the year. And while we still have some warm afternoons here near term, like I mentioned before, it doesn't mean we still can't see some pretty cool and chilly mornings. And one of those is going to be arriving tomorrow. So just be prepared to step out the door tomorrow morning that it's going to be chilly. And you may want to dress a little warmer tomorrow morning before you can, start to take off the jacket as we get into the afternoon, as we're going to be back value similar to today, right back in the 70s tomorrow afternoon. But for tomorrow morning in the 40s, and for some of those cooler spots, likely even lower 40s. So chilly start to tomorrow. Once we get into the weekend, that's when those low temperatures will be back closer to 50 Friday, Saturday morning, into the 50s Sunday into Monday morning. So not as chilly at that point, but still a string of some pretty cool mornings ahead with some warm afternoons. Big temperature swings, especially when you're dealing with a little cloud cover in place. We can get these temperature swings even upwards of 30 degrees from the morning into the afternoon. So it's one of those same type of patterns the rest of going into the remainder of this week and this weekend that you could very well use if you wanted the heat and the air conditioning at the same day in your car from the drive into and the drive home from work. That type of pattern is what we're going to be in. So as we jump into Futurecast, notice there is some additional cloud cover tomorrow. Still a good amount of sun, but we do have some more clouds in the mix. It sticks around for Thursday night into Friday morning, but just as we saw yesterday, as we go throughout Friday, well, those clouds will begin to clear, and it turns sunny on us on Friday. And from there, the clear skies remain with us for the entirety of the weekend. We don't look back. Abundant sunshine Saturday into Sunday. And those high temperatures, again, at that point, back to around 80, lower 80s Saturday into Sunday. It'll be upper 70s near 80 on Friday. And these warm afternoons continue with abundant sunshine. Going to be a gorgeous stretch of weather arriving for the weekend. And while the rain chance holds off as we go through this week, there is some rain chances in sight. It likely holds off until we get towards next Tuesday into Wednesday. So a weekend to October before we finally see some rain chances return. And it is with a cold front passage. We'll likely have some showers around Tuesday into Wednesday as we get a better grasp of the timing of that frontal passage. That's when we can start to say with an increase in confidence in rain chances. I do think we can bump up rain chances once we gain a little more confidence on the timing of this frontal passage. Right now, Tuesday into Wednesday, the timing could very well be pushed back more into Tuesday, could be pushed forward more into Wednesday. So once we pinpoint the timing of this going into this weekend, once we pinpoint a better timing of that frontal passage, we can start to narrow it down of the timing. Is it likely going to favor more one day than the other? It's either more Tuesday into Wednesday morning or more Tuesday night, maybe into Wednesday afternoon. And once we can narrow down the timing and give you a better idea of more precise timing when to watch for those showers. But that looks to be it as we go through the middle of next week, that just that one round of some showers with a cold front passage. And that looks to be it. There is that potential. Some models are hitting at for some more showers into the following weekend, but not enough confidence to throw in that chance for showers at this point. But we'll see. Maybe we can sneak in some additional showers into that following weekend. And hopefully, overall, a little more rain next week than the bone dry conditions for this week. And not only the potential for some additional rain, and the fact that next week can be more wet with respect to this week, but it also could be cooler. And that's especially after Monday, Tuesday, the cool down follows with those showers, and the high temperature will fall just into the 70s Tuesday. But the real cool down is felt Wednesday, Thursday, when those high temperatures are back to around 70 degrees, maybe even holding into the 60s next Thursday. That's much more of a noticeable cool down. And we're getting back closer to seasonable values. Normal highs are in the upper 60s for the first week of October. So we're getting back closer to seasonable values. Technically, though, we're certainly not below normal, and still technically we can trend at least a little bit above normal. So, but just more seasonable with respect to the 80s ahead later on into next week. If you've been hoping for a little more seasonable feel to the air, it is in sight for the latter part of next week. But here near term, it's feeling still much more like summer than fall in these afternoons. A little bit of that fall chill in the mornings, but these afternoons, it's certainly going to still feel warm to us. So your 9+1 day forecast, quiet through the weekend, still a good amount of sunshine. Just a few more clouds in the mix for your Thursday into Friday. See the decrease in cloud cover as it turns sunny on us again, going throughout Friday. Sunny Saturday, Sunday. Highs, well, in the 70s the next couple of days, getting awfully close to 80 by Friday. But we'll likely hit around 80 then Saturday into Sunday, mid-lower 80s then on Monday. There's that cool down that follows into the middle of next week with that high temperature back closer to 70 degrees. That's when we'll spot some showers with a cold front passage. Again, maybe some showers into the following weekend. We'll see. Certainly no great confidence on that right now, but maybe we can sneak in some showers going late next week into that following weekend. Something keep an eye on, and of course keep you updated as we extend throughout this week as well as next week. I appreciate it, everyone, as always, for tuning into this edition of Nate at 8. Appreciate it, as always. I hope everyone had a wonderful day, enjoyed the abundant sunshine. Again, if you like today, you're going to love the weather that we have through the weekend. It's really a lot of the same we're dealing with some of these warm afternoons and plenty of sun in place through the weekend. Keep in mind, tomorrow morning, it's chilly. You're going to want to dress a bit warmer for tomorrow morning, but of course, we'll need that when highs are back well in the 70s in the afternoon. And in general, these are some pretty cool mornings ahead that we have in place. As we go through the weekend, we can sneak back into the 40s, especially by Saturday morning. We'll be close to it again for Friday morning. And then more of a cool rather than chilly start to Sunday as well as Monday morning with those low temperatures back into the 50s. Again, catch me coming up Newsnight at 10 on Fox Eye. Newsnight tonight at 11 for the latest. And as always, for that next edition of Nate at 8. And with it being Wednesday now, coming up here the next couple of days, we have our high school football action. We are having high school football for Thursday and Friday evenings. So make sure to stay tuned for some high school football action coming up. We'll be during Nate at 8 time. So we'll be occurring during 8 o'clock. You'll be able to watch the high school football action for Thursday evening as well as Friday evening for our Sports Friday. So definitely make sure to stay tuned for some high school football action the next couple of days. And boys, there's some beautiful evenings for high school football. That's for sure. Now, weather will not be a factor in these games. It's going to be nice to get out and watch some high school football if you're heading out over the next couple of evenings. And if you're not, again, you're still able to catch some action in the comfort of your home. Tune in and watch live streams with Thursday Night Lights, Friday Night Rivals, Game of the Week, Thursday, Friday evening, and of course, Sports Friday on the go. Bill Phillips, Don Sloan, they'll give you highlights of all the area games that you can catch on our YouTube channel. If you're watching here on YouTube, this channel, if you're watching on Facebook, head over to YouTube and watch on WTOV9's YouTube page. You can watch Sports Friday on the go. A really cool product that Don Sloan and Bill Phillips put together and to be able to give highlights of a lot of handful of area games, if not more. going throughout the evening on these Friday nights. Very cool. All right. But I digress. Thank you so much for tuning in, Carol. Good report. Thank you, Carol. I appreciate those kind words. I appreciate it as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, the next edition of Nate coming up next week. Be sure to catch some high school football action over the next couple of evenings. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week on that next edition of Nate at 8.